Hi everyone. When we start out in this industry as self-published or indie authors, one of the first questions that we all ask is, how much money will I make? And that's such a difficult question to answer. I'm going to attempt to do so in this video, not by giving you a specific figure, but by talking you through the different things that will impact that figure. And there are so many variables. So how many books will you sell? What formats are you selling them in, and how are you selling them? And I'll go through all those specifics on what you need to figure out to have some idea of how much money you might make. And this all isn't helped by the fact that there isn't kind of a typical salary. Like if you were applying for a job, you would see applicants can expect to receive a salary between X and X. There's such huge variability for authors, and of course this is a business anyway, so this isn't about there being you will make X. It's about predictions and making good decisions and a little bit of luck. Now, you may well have seen people online talking about how many books they are selling and how much money they are making, and that is amazing and aspirational. Some of those are traditionally published, some of them are self-published, and it's wonderful to have those people to see that it's possible, that it can be done, and that they are smashing it. Just be wary if you see that people are saying, just follow this particular formula to be as successful as I am, because particularly if they're charging for that. Whilst we take elements from people, tips for success, like ingredients that will help us to be successful, we are all different, and writing is very much a person-centered business. It's all about connections between the reader and the author and the customer and the business person. And that's part of why it's so difficult to know for sure how much money you will make. But what it means is that what works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you. So all I can do is share what has worked for me, and then if that's helpful for you, fantastic. But it might not be. And so I think when somebody's saying this is how to do it, that doesn't work that way. We are all different. We have different personalities. We have different strong points, skill sets, networks, all those things. So it is going to vary. You can't necessarily exactly follow somebody else's model. What you can do is look at these successful people and think, actually, I could do that, or we're similar in that way, so that might work for me, or our books are quite similar, so maybe that would work here. Creatively, we just have so much difference. So just you know, we can't all do it the same way. But it is wonderful to see these really successful people in this space. At the other end of the scale, we're going to see people who aren't making really very much money at all, or maybe are losing money self-publishing their books. Now, some of those people are quite happy with that. It might be that self-publishing their book was a passion project. They're not fussed about making any money, totally fine for them. Or it might be that their book is part of sort of supporting another part of their business, and they're not that bothered about making money from the book. It's about pushing the other element of their business. It could be that it's a book a family member has written and they are quite happy to not be making profit from that. They just want it out in the world. There can be so many different aspects to this. So equally, it could be somebody very early in their career who are still very much investing and learning and aren't at that point yet where they are starting to earn out. So yeah, a huge scale, and that does make it very difficult. I found some figures on the Ally website. There was a report. I will link everything below that I mentioned, by the way. So Ally, the Alliance of Independent Authors, they did a study in 2023, and they found that the median earnings for self-published authors were $12,749 compared to traditional authors at $6,080. I'll come back to the difference in a moment. What they noted is that we have these extremes. As I said, there will be authors earning millions and authors losing money. So that's why they took a median instead of a mean, because the data was just too skewed. So as I said, we get this difference between the traditional and the self-published authors. And in this video, I don't want to compare the two things. I'll link a video where I've done that before. But briefly, as a self-published author, we are retaining more of the royalties than a traditionally published author does. So we're not sharing the royalty with a publisher, an agent, potentially other people like a publicist or whoever. that's potentially, unless we choose to work with freelancers and so forth, that's ours. So we have the potential to earn more per book or more overall than a traditionally published author does. However, on the flip side, a traditionally published author has the publishing house with the brand, with the customer base, with the network. And so they have far more reach than we as self-published authors typically do. And so they often sell more copies. So we're making more per book, they are selling more copies. I tried to find some good figures for how many copies we sell, and it was difficult to find anything that looked reliable. Do link below if you find anything good. The figures for self-published authors were, for the lifetime of a book, something like 250 up to about 700 books. So in the hundreds, I think, is what we can safely say is typical for a self-published author. And I found a figure for a debut traditional author of 3,000 books for the lifetime of that debut book. So, you know, you're looking at almost tenfold, 300 for self-published, 3,000 for traditional. So the traditional author will probably sell more, but we keep more of the profit. So you do see this difference that self-published authors, their median is higher, but there is such a range and it is so unpredictable. And I think it's interesting. So I'm not including the things about traditional publishing, as I said, to do a comparison. I think we have more familiarity with how traditional publishing works. So having that comparison point can be helpful for sort of situating ourselves. So that's what we're saying. Typical self-published author is earning somewhere around $12,000 to $13,000 per year, but it varies. So why does it vary? What are all these variables? Let's get into it. So we've already talked about how many books you might sell. Now that is such a hard thing to predict. So we've said it could be in the hundreds. Obviously there are authors selling millions and there are authors selling none. So we're saying typically it's fairly normal to be somewhere around the sort of 200 to 700 figures, but when you're new to this industry, it's very hard to know what that will look like. Will your book do incredibly well, capture people's attention? Will it really not? And sometimes even if you have done this for a long time, you can think a book's going to do really well and it doesn't. There's a certain element of thinking you know your market, doing your very best to get that book in front of the right people in the way they want to see it. And there's very much an element of luck, I think, because you can put everything in place and never really quite know what will happen. So that kind of number is hard to predict, but what you can know is how many you need to sell in order to pay for what the book cost you. When we go through all the different royalty options, how many are you going to have to sell to break even and then to make a profit? So let's start off with talking about the different formats. So there's ebook, paperback, hardback. I know there are others, large print and sort of special editions and box sets and audiobooks. I'm going to leave audiobooks out for today. In fact, no, I won't. We'll talk about audiobooks a little bit as well, but I will start with ebooks. So ebooks, you have lots of different options. Now, bear in mind, because there is no print cost, there is no storage cost, you can make quite a lot more royalty on ebooks, depending on your options, than you do with physical books. The same can be said for audiobooks, although audiobooks have a high outlay in terms of time and cost in producing the audiobook. So the ebook, if we have a look at Amazon, you have an option with them. You can either have a low retail price, which has a lower royalty of, it's around about 30%, or you can set a higher retail price and then you're able to set yourself a higher royalty rate as well. It's something like 70%. So we have an option of earning up to 70% of our retail price. Now make sure you are setting a good retail price. Some people make the mistake of setting it really, really high, which puts off customers. So make sure that you've got a point at which you're earning enough, but at which customers aren't put off. And keep an eye on whether there are changes that mean that you are earning less and you might need to put your prices up. Just keep an eye on it. Now that's Amazon, but we also have other options such as Draft to Digital. Now I'm going to put a link below for Draft to Digital. This is an affiliate link. It doesn't cost you any more, but if you do sign up to Draft to Digital using that link, then I get a small commission. If you were thinking about using them, I'd be really grateful for you using that link, but it's there if you would like to. So Draft to Digital offer lots of different options. So you've got the one where you're just earning a royalty for somebody buying the ebook, or you've got people, you've got libraries buying the book. So in that instance, they're either buying a single copy of the book, but because it's for multiple users, your price is higher, so you're earning a royalty from a higher price. Or the library might have a pay-per-click option with you, in which case you are earning a small amount per loan. It depends. Also, there are subscription models that you can be part of as a part of Draft to Digital, so that could be Kobo or Hoopla, or there are lots on there. And again, because someone isn't keeping the ebook, they are just reading it and then returning it, you get a much smaller amount. But the hope is that you find new customers, that people try the book because it's part of the subscription. So you also have that option. Now compare that, going back to Amazon, they have their exclusivity option where so Kindle Unlimited, where if you're a part of that, you can't sell the ebook anywhere else. But what you get is access to their readers, and you are paid per page read. So that can vary from someone having a quick flick through your book and going, actually, no, thank you. So you just get a few pence. Or if your book is short, like my children's books that are on Kindle Unlimited, it's a few pence. Or someone enjoying your book, reading the whole thing. Maybe you have a series, they read all of them. So you get paid per page. So have a look at the different calculations, see what the royalty rates are, and figure out, often there are calculators, figure out these different rates. What are you going to sign up to, and what are the royalties for those different options? It could be as low as those pennies for reading pages, or it could be up at the high proportion of a higher priced book for a library, for example. So that's ebooks. Audiobooks are kind of similar. You set a price for someone to buy the audiobook, or you have subscription models, and you have different options about whether you want it to be exclusive, different people you can sell your book through. Very, very similar. Again, do the adding up to see where your royalty rates come out. Then let's think about physical products, so paperbacks and hardbacks. Now, I found an article from the Royal Society of Authors, I will link it, that said that traditionally, typical royalty rates are 10% of the retail for hardback and 7.5% for paperback. And although a self-published author in theory earns more because you keep more of the proportion, I would say in terms of the costs associated with different ways of selling your books and things, I actually think that that 10%-ish figure is quite good for ballparking, actually. And I sometimes go, okay, let's say £1 a book, all formats, all the different ways I sell, let's just sit there. And that works quite well for me, just as a very rough way of working things out. But we'll dive in a bit deeper in a moment and talk about the different ways you can sell your books. Before we do that, I just wanted to talk about this sort of paperback versus hardback thing. And essentially it's because a hardback, you don't typically sell very many. My books are available in hardback, I hardly sell any. But the people who buy them are buying them either as a gift for somebody, or they are a person who really likes hardbacks, they like to collect them. Or it's going to be something where the book is sort of out on display. So they are willing to pay slightly more for a hardback because it's special. So yeah, we have that option with a hardback, or you might do a really special edition book where we can put that price higher. And so you potentially can also have a little bit more % on the royalty rate there. So then let's think about the different ways that we can sell these physical books. So I'll start off with print on demand. There are loads of different companies, whether you go through Ingram Spark, KDP, Book Vault, Lulu, there's loads. Go on to their websites and do their calculators. You'll be able to put in the details of your book, figure out what your royalty rate will be, and then you can make your decisions. You can try out different retail prices, different print options to see what's going to work for you. That should give you a number that you can use to go, right, that's how much I make every time I sell a book. With a small amount of variation, sometimes they have a slightly different royalty rate if you're selling through a certain avenue. So sometimes it's different for Amazon, for example. So just have a look at that. But that should give you the figure that you need to do all of your maths around all of this stuff. The next option to talk about is selling direct. So if you are buying copies of your book that you are going to sell in person, so whether that's on your website and you are posting them, or you can link up like Book Vault with Shopify and then that's on your website so you don't handle the books. So there are options like that. But you're selling through your own platforms that you control. So website, you are going to an event and selling a craft fair or an author event, selling books. Maybe you're going into a school and you're selling books there. Maybe you're doing a talk and you're selling books there. It's copies that you are selling through your own channels. And in this one, you can make quite a high royalty. So for example, if you are buying bulk printed books, then your cost is very low and you have a really high margin on those books. All you've got to consider is postage costs if it's something on your website, and storage costs if you have any. And then thinking about an in-person event, is there a table fee? Did it cost you fuel? Anything like that. What are all of your costs associated, packaging, all that kind of stuff. If you add bookmarks, I do, all those things, and adding that all up to figure out your royalty. So you can do that via the bulk printed method, or if you use print on demand, you can order author copies to do that as well. So figure out how much did those books cost you, so therefore what's your profit margin, but do factor in all those other costs as well, because although you are making a big chunk, sometimes there can be quite high costs. And for example, if you are selling via your website, websites are expensive, so that's something to think about. So that's selling direct. I also wanted to mention, if you are bulk printing books and then you are distributing via Amazon Seller Central or Amazon Advantage, Amazon Seller Central in particular, the profit margins can be very, very low, and at times I have made a loss on there. I'll link below my videos about Amazon Seller Central, might be helpful for you. So sometimes some avenues of selling your physical books, it could also be that you have a retailer that wants a really, really low wholesale discount, something like that, can be quite low. And actually, to come onto that wholesale discount, have in mind what your discount is. So for me, it's 40%. If a shop wants to stock my book, if you have a shop and you'd like to stock it, it's 40%. So I keep 60%, you keep 40%. That's how it works. But some shops might ask for more. So again, think about that. If you're going to supply directly to shops, then you need to know what your percentage is, and then that can help you to figure out your royalty rate through that particular avenue as well. So to recap, print on demand, that's going, if you use it, that's going to go to Amazon, all the different websites, Waterstones, Barnes & Noble, whatever, sell online in that way, and you may have expanded distribution set up so shops can buy through that as well. You might be selling direct via your website or author events. You might be distributing books to places like Amazon yourself, or you might have this wholesale discount to supply to shops. So again, figure out what you're going to do, what are your royalties in those particular options, and again, that can add to all the information that we need. So you're going to take all of that, figure out your sort of typical royalty per book sold, and then hopefully you can figure out approximately how many books you need to sell to pay back your investment and then to make a profit. You can also have a look, of course, at how many books you think you will sell and therefore how much you think you will make. That's always an unknown. What's really important is your break-even point and how much you would like to make, and have that as a target too. What that means then is, as your book is selling, you can go, I've sold up to where I'm going to break even. If I sell another X amount of books, then I'm at this point, or I am way behind. I really need to sell more books. If you have no idea of how many to sell, then you're not going to necessarily go, fantastic, I needed to get to 200 books. Brilliant. Or you're not going to go, I've only sold 300 and I really needed to sell 1,000 of this. whatever your figures are, they're going to be different for everybody. You need to know where those figures should be so that you can make sure that you are taking action. If the book is not selling, do you need to promote it? Do you need to try and sell it in a different way? What else can you try to get that book out there and sold in the best ways? Maybe the avenues that you chose weren't the best ones. Can we take a different approach to this? So all of that hopefully will help you to figure out how much you might make as a self-published author. I know that I've answered the question of how much money will I make with, I don't know, basically, because we don't know. It is really variable. The people out there doing it, we all make very different amounts of money, and it changes year on year depending on what we're doing, how the market's going, and so forth. So there's a huge amount of variability and unpredictability. Business is always quite risky. And we also have all of these variables that we're working with that make it really difficult to predict as well. So I hope that's helpful to sort of get an idea of what you could make and what you would like to make. So that's the thing, if you know, oh, I would like to make, let's say, $15,000, then you can say, okay, to do that, I have to sell X amount of books, and then that gives you a target. So it's having that information and also knowing, if I sell my book this way, so maybe you're a direct person, if I go big on direct sales, I direct everyone through my website, that's what I advertise all the time, then you know what you're doing to get to the figure that you need to be at. I hope that's helpful. I will link everything below, so videos that I've made before that might be helpful and all the links that I've mentioned. If you've got anything you'd like to add, please do leave it in the comments. Please hit like if you enjoyed that or found it useful, and do subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this one, and have a look at my back catalogue. There is so much stuff there. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.